Okay, welcome to this seminar. My name is Michael Poole. I'm a business development manager at the University of Lincoln. I specifically work for our College of Arts, where we've been using various scanning technologies and techniques. One in particular that I'm going to talk about is to do with virtual immersive environments. As a bit more background as to who I am, I work, as I said, for the College of Arts, where I represent a number of skills and expertise that I use with a variety of industries right across the country, and particularly architectural expertise, design expertise, media production, performing arts, English journalism, and heritage and history. Those are the various areas of expertise that are from our university. As a business development manager, my role is working with industry on a number of projects, from very small companies to some very well-known companies. That's included Chanel, British Aerospace, the Royal Household, etc., etc. And a lot of the technologies that I work with within one area of our college is a range of 3D scanning and recording techniques, photographic, VR, AR, digital fabrication, 3D printing. We do a lot of historic materials analysis. We do a lot of work with the construction sector. And obviously we do a lot of, we use a lot of computer modeling software packages too. With this talk, what I'm aiming to do is to give you an understanding of what I mean by virtual immersive environments, and also to look at this technology as essentially, it is a scanning process. It's a 3D infrared scanning process that helps us to create these virtual environments. Sorry, my phone. Just switch my phone off. But equally, this particular process, it's also a photographic tool as well. It's not just a scanning tool, and I think that will become obvious as I progress through this talk. I'm also going to explain how it differs from a 360-degree photo and other scanning processes. Obviously, I'm going to show and demonstrate various applications for this technology. And towards the end, I will have a quick summary of the workflow needed to create a virtual environment, and also some of the limitations of this technology as well. First off, I want to put this scanning process in the context of other 3D scanning devices. And I appreciate that I know that there are media companies out there, multimedia companies out there that are using this technology, again, to capture an audio visual effect rather than to scan an environment in 3 dimensions. But as a spatial data capture technology, I've created 3 rough divisions of scanners that are suitable for scanning objects, those for structures, those for landscapes, and that, dependent on the object size, it'll have an impact on accuracy, if that matters to you and your industry. If you just want to record it for visual purposes, it's less of an issue. But as a spatial data capture technology, it can be an issue. So what I'm going to be talking about is a tool that's helpful to scan structures, typically interior structures, sometimes exterior structures, although it has limitations, and I will come on to that. So I just wanted to put this into context as a tool for capturing in 3 dimensions environments, objects, or landscapes. So what is infrared scanning? What is it? Essentially, you can create an accurate 3-dimensional copy or a digital twin of all types of spaces, venues, shops, retail environments, anywhere where a visitor or a client or a customer interacts with, and you need that copy, particularly at the moment in times of limited access and lockdown. Once you've got this digital copy, such as the example I've got in the illustration I've got here, your clients, your customers can freely explore and move around this space. They can do it anytime, anywhere. They can do it from a phone, a tablet, a computer, using VR. You can navigate it just like you would Google Street View through a road network. You can view it from multiple angles. You can interact with it in terms of you can interact with the hotspots and the information points of interest that you put into the environment. These can be multimedia rich hotspots or points of interests. You can create 3D walkthroughs or guided tours. You can print high quality photos from the model, from the space once you've captured it. And you can download schematic floor plans or even the 3-dimensional OBJ file if you want to import this into a CAD environment. And again, you can link it back through to Street View as well. Very quickly, I'm going to come back to this example, but this is one example that we've done for a church. If I just click inside, so we don't want to look that way, I can begin to quickly navigate into this environment, and you'll see I've got various points here that are points of interest, etc. And then I can come back out to it and rotate it. And that view is what we call the doll's house view. But it gives you a very quick idea, although I will come back to this, of what it is we can do with this environment. In terms of how it works, it's a relatively simple technology. It's about the size of a shoebox. You can see it here. It stands on top of a tripod. And it's very simply operated through an iOS device, an iPhone or an iPad. And that's what controls the camera process, but it's viewable on an Android, on any kind of smartphone, really. As long as you can get into a web browser, you can view it. So smartphones, tablets, PCs, Macs, etc., etc. But to do the scanning, it's an iOS device. We set the camera typically up at eye level view because that's the kind of user experience we want to create. We don't want to sort of be down at a child level unless we're doing something for applications with children, and we don't want to be at a level where we were in just impossibly tall. So we set it deliberately at a typical eye level view. It's simply controlled, and this is the information, the kind of feedback we get that we're looking at on the iPad. So if I go to this number here, 14, this is where we've located the scanner at this point 14. As it reaches out, as the infrared data is beamed out from the camera, it creates a series of points, and the further you go out, the more the points are dispersed. And it uses, wherever the point lands, multiple cameras on the camera triangulate this, and it creates what we call a point cloud that it then wraps a 4K quality photo to. I'm showing you this particular view because at this location here, the camera will only take a picture and scan what it sees here. So behind this unit here, water cooler in this case in the corridor, it can't see it. So wherever we've got a black space, it's not being scanned. So consideration as to where you place the scanner is quite crucial. So typically we've put it here so we can see down this corridor, down that corridor, down here. We put one in a doorway here so we can see either side of the door. And then at 2 points in the corridor at this office here. Then similar journey here, outside the door, just inside the door so that we can see down this row of tables, down here, pick up with 0.6, midway 0.2, and then at 0.3 here, we're beginning to collect data to build up the clearest picture of the space that we can see here. So that's roughly how the scanner works. The scanner, when it rotates, it takes about 30 seconds, so we can move around a space fairly quickly. It's a relatively quick process. This is an example of what the doll's house looks like once it's been processed. So once we've captured it on the iPad, we go back to the office, we upload it to the server. It's usually processed overnight automatically. We don't do anything with that data. So again, that means that there's a very limited labor content in there. And then the following morning, typically, we've got our results for us to then start to populate with what we call hotspots or points of interest. One thing I want to note here is that this is not 360-degree photography. What I've tried to illustrate here is that this is an example of 360 photography where what typically happens is a sphere is created where photos are wrapped inside a sphere. So it gives the illusion that you're actually looking at verticals and horizontals and that you are in a physical space, but it's not. It's photographs wrapped to a sphere that you are just looking around. We are creating here with this process measured space. It can see that a floor is horizontal, walls are vertical. It can see objects, you can navigate around them. So potentially we can download 3-dimensional data we could use in a CAD package. So there is a difference here. It's quite important to consider how you prepare a space for scanning. So if you're using it more for the purposes of show and tell as a media enriched showcase, if you're using it for the selling of retail property, etc., preparation of the space is really important. So you have to declutter, tidy, and make it very presentable. Take away cups of coffee, take away pets, and make sure you've got a nice presentable space. And the other word of warning as well is you take away personal information or anything that might give away somebody's identity. So I'm sure photographers of property will understand this. But it is important that if you go into a space and you photograph it, it will pick up people's personal details. So for example, in one office we got a white screen on the wall where we've got names of clients that we were working for. We've got the values of those clients. We've got timelines on those projects, typical sort of team information that we've got for those in that office. And it captured it all. It captured an A4 sheet of paper next to it that listed out all the phone numbers of the staff and their emails in there as well. So any information that leads to personal identity, you need to cover that up. The software does allow you to blur faces, so you can hide faces. That is within the software. So, but the overall point is preparing a space to photograph and scan. We had hotspots down in the cluster of this particular example. There are hotspots that we've added into this. By hotspots, I mean, on one level, you can add a simple label or a title. And so when somebody enters the room, they'll see all these little flags, these little markers, and they can click on them and it will give some basic information if you want to do that. You can color coordinate the marker. So here, this is what the software looks like that we use to create these hotspots. You can color coordinate them. You can alter the length and the position of where you put the hotspots. We color coordinate them because sometimes we want to send or curate a story that sends people on different journeys through the hotspots, depending on who we're talking to. So on one hand, we've been talking to clients about a space. On the other hand, we're talking to visitors to that space, two very different audiences. And we need to let them know that or create separate copies for them. Because we do a lot of work in the heritage sector, I want to give some applications that we use in the heritage sector, but I'm acutely aware that none of you that I'm talking to, as far as I know, work in the heritage sector. But these applications that I'm going to go through are very viable for your industries. And I do have other examples that are not exclusively heritage, but this is where we started our journey off using this technology because of the clients and the projects that we were working on right across the UK, where we needed to create a digital copy of an environment that we're working on for an architect, for a developer, where they need to understand, in our case, the historic significance of what they're dealing with in terms of what they can take out of a building or what they need to restore. So hopefully that makes sense. So we use it, the kind of applications is to create a digital record or a copy of an environment that we use for a range of purposes that include talking to architects, developers, main contractors, for insurance purposes, so that we've got a record of something for the purposes of disaster recovery. We use it to help plan and do our research with contractors and architectural companies. We're using it as well to document a before and after, the journey of how something changes, how that environment adapts and moves on. I've got some examples of that. We've worked with facilities and estates management in terms of planning emergency routes, etc. We've used this technology to help with events coordination, exhibitions. So we've used it with curation teams to help curate a story of an event or an exhibition that they're putting on. Capture before and after journeys, talked about that. We're working with facilities managers as well to help them to do wayfinding and training for wayfinding and how to access a building, so that it's a space is not unusual for when somebody arrives there. We've been using it as well to record spaces that are normally inaccessible to certain groups of people or for a whole multitude of reasons, and I'm going to come back to that one. All the spaces that we create tend to be embedded in websites and social media. We've used it for public and educational engagement and for the purposes of visitor economies. I've been looking at a project this morning and it's specifically to do with the visitor economy. Again, in terms of one example, I'm going to go through some of these applications, and I've added in a few extras as well that are not exclusively heritage. But this gives you a range of, again, a taste of all the different applications. So when we're working on site, we're using it to help create this photographic reference point of a site that's going to be redeveloped. We're adding notes via our hotspots that are on here for contractors, etc. We know that the space that we've documented, this three-dimensional space, it's accurate to within 1%. We can create orthographic views, photographic orthographic views, as well as traditional vector orthographic views. We can export it to CAD, etc., etc. In terms of the software, this is a cottage that we've been looking at for the National Trust, where they've asked us to look at the historical importance of this early mud and stud building that's in Lincolnshire. We create these doll's house views, and then we reverse engineer this structure. We produce a report for the client so that they're informed as to how that they can reinstate this. But the point I'm trying to make here is that once we've created these scans and we've uploaded it, this is what's automatically produced by the software. We've not produced this. We just download this as a function of the software. And the scanner, the software, I don't know what AI algorithms it uses to do this, but it does. It knows that when we've been in this room here, it's seen that as a bath, and it adds in an icon for a bath. It's seen the sink, it knows where the locations are, and it's added them. It knows where the location of the taps were, and it's added them. It knew that when we opened this door here, it couldn't see behind it, but it guessed it was a toilet room. So it tries to label the room, and it gives it some dimensions as well. And so we can produce these floor plans, which are very useful if you're working in the heritage sector, architectural sector, events planning, facilities management. You've got this function on there, as well as being able to create photographic orthographic views. Because we're using it with contractors, it's been very handy for doing remote site visits. So one property we've been working on the Isle of Man, we've been over once, we've completely documented the whole space, we come back, and then we were able to walk through a space remotely with a contractor to measure things, to add annotations to it, to add reports to it, to add photographs to it from bits that we found, etc., etc. So it's excellent for these virtual site meetings. Going back to site can be very expensive if you're working at the other end of the country. This one here, this is where I've just imported a three-dimensional model. It gives you an idea that you can download these three-dimensional models. The strange thing about this particular model that we're looking at here is that whilst we think we're looking at the outside of the model, the image that you're seeing is actually the image of the inside of the building. So we're actually looking at the back of the image, put in the shape of the building. But you can import this into a CAD environment and then work with that to create some more refined geometry. So you can download that kind of data as too. Where we've used it for public engagement, so typically this is a project we've been working on with the Friends of Friendless Churches. And we've said here from the opening, so people arrive at this point of the doll's house. So you can see it's a photographic quality. And we've just said that the red hot spots are around visitor information, and the blue hot spots are around some conservation work. So that the Friends of Friendless Churches can either switch the blue hot spots off if they really want to keep it for their visitors, or vice versa. So again, we've been using it for public engagement and these virtual events. So again, going back to this particular church, and go in the model here, come down to the next stage here. So for example, this is the red hotspots for visitors here. What we've embedded here is that they've got this poppy celebration here. And what we've added to this is the YouTube clip around story of how poppies came into being. So if I click onto that, you can have a look at that and get an idea about the story of the poppies. Or as we go further down here, again, if I jump onto one of the blue hotspots, we've just let the client know that that this is a label to a particular hymn. Up here, we've got a label up here around some markings on the wall and what we've got here. The hotspot that we've got here is then saying that there's some Victorian stenciling here. So we're trying to curate, as an example, for this particular client, what you can and can't do with that space. And here's another example here where we've embedded some sort of enriched media into the structure. Play through here, and again, we've just linked this through to a video here that's about the stained glass window at this church.
6th century.
So you can add all this kind of enriched media if you want, from simple labels through to audio, through to web links, through to video, etc. You get the idea of what we can do there. The one question that we got here is that if we're creating these physical environments, then surely we're disincentivizing people from visiting these physical spaces. And that's one thing that we did a very quick straw poll with the Friends of Friendless churches. And what we were actually finding is that actually, in an odd roundabout way, the feedback we were getting is that it was encouraging people to come and visit those spaces because they were learning something. We were giving them information that was teasing them about the spaces, where they thought, well, actually, we need to go and know more about this space that we can view here. So if you curate it properly, if you tell the story properly, you can actually encourage footfall to a space, to a heritage attraction, or to a visitor attraction, or to a shop, or to an event, etc., etc. There's scope to actually encourage that rather than disincentivize it. We've used it here this gives you an example, another example of how we've used it here to embed PDF reports for a contractor that we've been working with on the reinstatement, the conservation of this particular church here. So again, we've put into here some key documents that the contractor wants to see. We can work with them, go online, and we can refer to them to the particular pages of a report here about the redevelopment of a given property. So just move on with my slide here. And again, here we've added in images here of around some droplets of wax on the gilded, some gilded decoration that we've identified that needs to be cleaned and dressed. So this is the kind of thing that we've been doing when on some of the conservation projects that we have. Equally, we can visit this project on one project that we were looking at. We needed to know whether we could get this painting out through that particular door, or whether we needed to use a bigger door at the other end of the building, which was a bit more difficult to use. What we've been able to show the client here is that you can't do that through that particular door case because we've measured it. But again, measuring the spaces has got all sorts of applications around. Can you get a wheelchair through certain spaces, for disaster recovery, etc.? Can you actually install certain other equipment into the space, and so on? With this particular example, the client was very keen that we documented the journey of how a particular property has gone under a redevelopment. They're reinstating a museum. It's for an old property for a woman that lived into it until she was well into, I think she was 103 when she moved out of this property. But the lovely stories around this is that it was condemned at one point, I think in the 80s, because she'd never had electricity installed there or running water, and it was condemned on that basis. And this is an example. So we went in during its construction. We got them to take out some of the construction materials. We scanned the space here to show how they'd stripped it back to the shell. And then we were also able to go back into the space once it's done up to show, okay, and this is it here after it's been redeveloped. And we've done this because the client here is very keen to show to the public this journey of how it was redeveloped, as well as telling the story of how this lady lived in the property during various points in her life. So that's what we've used it for there. Equally, we can use this to document spaces that are inaccessible. or hard to get to places, backroom collections for the purposes of insurance, phobias, mental health, etc., etc. In this case, it's the bell tower at Lincoln Cathedral. You're not allowed to go into this space if you're below 14, they're not insured. And equally, you've got to be physically fit and able to make your way up through very small space to get into the clock room. And there are some people that don't want to do it who are physically able because they just have certain phobias. But also, we've been in touch. We've had one organisation contact us because they want to use it to help people that have got various mental health issues, so that they can see a particular specialist place that they need to go to. They can understand how they navigate that space, so they're reassured before they go. So again, there's all sorts of applications for using this technology around this sphere. We've been working with one or two organisations around facilities management. So this is Doddington Hall. We've been doing it as part of a visitor experience project, and then a facilities management project and a venue hire project. But it's great for the online collaborative planning and assessment. So somebody who's working for the fire service, etc., can have a virtual tour to check out the space. You can use it to help plan routes, to make sure that you've got all the sprinklers or fire extinguishers in the right place, etc. You can use it to as an inventory for equipment as well. Wayfinding, training staff on where all the exit points are, training subcontractors that need to visit the space, how they can come into and navigate the space safely, and how they can prepare for the space. Again, you can measure a check, etc., etc. And equally, you can document damage. This isn't our example, but this one I really like here is that they're using a hotspot here to, one, say that something is broken. They're using a hotspot to say where you can find the replacement from one of their preferred suppliers. The hotspot tells them where they can buy it from. It links through to their shop. And another hotspot tells you and explains via a YouTube video on how you can fix it. And I just thought that was a really cool thing to do as part of a facilities management project. So I've done that particular slide. Another example, and again, this one's not ours, but I put this one in because we're doing something similar at the moment, but I'm not allowed to show it. But this is for a company that basically manage workspaces. Once you've got a view and you can navigate around it, you can put this carousel of images at the bottom quite easily. So if you want to come out of this room, you don't have to go back to the doll's house or find your way around the building. You've got these shortcuts to key rooms. In this case, it takes you to a key room, so you can quickly look at it and work out, yes, I think this meeting room is going to be appropriate. The hotspots tell you about the AV equipment. The hotspots tell you how the AV equipment work and so on. So it's just a neat way of beginning to explore a space to work out whether it's appropriate for your needs. For the client, it's just a neat way to sort of help promote the space and to get that over in a really sort of dynamic, succinct way for clients to hopefully purchase and hire their spaces. We've worked with a company to document a showroom. Their showroom's locked down. They can't have many people coming into it, and they specialize in selling big Christmas display structures for companies to decorate shopping malls, liners, all those spaces that are currently locked down, but equally, this is what we've done for them. So that you could go into this showroom here, you can actually look and study some of the large structures, and you can measure them. You can link through into the shop to purchase them, or through to inquiries to link straight through to a chat line, phone line to talk to the company about it. And on the strength of the virtual showroom, all the large items within here, they actually sold them through the virtual showroom, not the real showroom. And when you walk into the smaller areas here where you've got various things on display, the hotspots are linked through to the shop, so people could then sort of have a look at it, look around the showroom, and then link through to the shop if they wanted to. So that's one way we work with a showroom. This is Alexandra Palace down in London, where a very simple, quick project here was that they wanted to document an event that they were having. So again, you can document temporary events, exhibitions, or festivals. You've got a catalogue, you've got a record where people can then visit that virtually. Again, you use the hotspots to sort of create that and curate that story, tell that story, and add in the relevant information to make it engaging, etc., etc. And then this is just a doll's house view of the Alexandra Palace that we've got here. So we were working on them on this particular project amongst some of our traditional conservation work as well. The other nice thing as well is that once you've got, you go in with the camera, you walk around the property taking all the scans to create this doll's house. You can then go back into the doll's house to take a photograph of a space. You think, well, I wish I'd have taken my camera at that point. Well, you did. So you just need to go into your virtual digital copy of let's say, Doddington Hall, navigate your way to a particular space, set your view up, and take a photograph of it. And it's a good quality photograph. So I've got an example here that I've got. So this is, tells you I look around the doll's house. I go into this particular room, navigate to a position where I want to go because I want to take a picture of the fireplace. I sort of set my camera roughly up, click my photograph or grab my camera, set it up a little bit further. I can zoom in and out if I want to, or in this case I didn't. I wanted a nice stand back view, and then that's saved to a library of photographs from here. So I'm creating photographs from the doll's house. I don't have to think I have to take my 3D scanner and a separate camera. It's all done through the scanning process. I think we've just done that one, so I'll just click out of that. So we can create 3D walkthroughs. So again, this is one that we've worked out where we want to create a simple walkthrough. So this is a very simple, quick walkthrough. Just wanted to get the point across, hopefully. We're having a look in the room, we zoom out, we rotate the doll's house, and the walkthrough doesn't have to be so you can zoom back out, zoom back in. You could walk through the building. You can create these guided tours as well as people being enabled to do their own tours. Limitations. The technology does have limitations. I'll be very honest about it. It's not very good when it comes to doing things outside. So here we've got a church where we have scanned outside, and it looks reasonably okay. And I can actually navigate you. You can click and navigate your way around it quite comfortably, but you will see glitches that we would point out too. So glitches here is we've got some stray triangulation, some strange meshes here. Well, they shouldn't be there. And the reason the camera struggles to capture the outside light is that is because of infrared. The camera uses infrared. It sends out a beam of infrared light. It hits the object. The cameras that are set at different positions read and triangulate the point that it sees to create the three-dimensional model. The problem is the sun gives off infrared light. So effectively during the hours of daylight, if you're outside of a structure, it effectively gets blinded. So you have to be careful with how you scan outside. So ideally, you scan when the sun hasn't crested the horizon. So first thing in the morning, last thing at night. Can you do it on a cloudy day? Not strictly speaking. It will create problems. So it does have those limitations, but we did achieve it. We did scan this church when the sun was above the horizon, but the camera had to be a lot closer together. So normally we work about 15 feet apart. We had to sort of reduce that distance by half, so many more scans. And there were glitches with the information, so it's not an accurate measured 3D space, whereas inside, it's fine, not a problem. So that gives you an idea of the limitations. However, you can, when you're outside, say to the camera, don't scan the space, take a 360-degree photograph for me. So again, that's what we did with this particular space. So you can see the doll's house here. These tags that are on the model are 360-degree photographs. So if I go into this model, so if I click on this model here, so now I can navigate around. It looks like I'm actually looking at horizontal surfaces, vertical surfaces, but I'm not. I'm inside a sphere, a photographic sphere. If I go back in now I'm back in my 3D navigated space. So there is a difference there. So the software that we use, there are a number of companies out there that enable you to create what I would call a virtual immersive environment. I think the most popular one out there at the moment, and the one that we use, is by a company called Matterport. It's an American system. and it was designed for estate agents. So the brief was that it had to be super simple to use. You needed to be able to go on site. You needed to be able to photograph an environment quickly. You needed to take it back to the office and be able to process it automatically. So we pay a monthly subscription, which enables us to go in to scan a space. We take it back to the office or wherever there's a good Wi-Fi upload link. We upload the information. It goes back to Matterport. We process that information overnight. Or sooner if it's a smaller space. We come back this morning, we come back the following day, and we've got that 3D doll's house for us to then relatively simply, it is a relatively simple process, add those hotspots. So it is quite a simple technology to use. We invested in the Matterport camera to do that, because it gives a better quality image. But you can use an iPhone 6 or later to do scanning for you. We've experimented with it. The only problem is that you really have to go through their learning materials to get a good copy, because the iPhone, you have to hold the iPhone and rotate the iPhone at a certain point. You can't hold it here, turn around here like this, turn around here like that. Errors occur. And the other thing as well, it'll only create a letterbox view of that way. You can create a 360-degree view, but again, you have to make sure you hold it at a specific point to get that good view. And also, the software, I think it limits what you can do with the results that you get back. So for us, it's not a massive amount of money, but we get such a much better result from this particular system. These cameras here are what Matterport approve or like as 360-degree cameras. However, you can go to a higher end and buy a Leica camera that is compatible with the Matterport software. And yeah, I'm talking purely about the Matterport system. There are other systems out there. You can go to YouTube, and if you typed in Matterport, there is one guy there who does an overview of all similar technologies. And I think as time progresses, you'll probably see other systems begin to offer or compete comfortably with Matterport. But at the moment, it's a system we prefer. I'll put this slide in. I'm sorry it's diagrammatic and not as visual as the other ones, but I wanted to emphasize the basic workflow and the importance and some of the benefits of this workflow. So at stage one, for us, it's all about capturing the data. So if you're doing it because you purely want to create this visual multimedia experience, it's relatively straightforward. But if you're doing it for other activities, like you do want to measure the space, you do need to work with multiple clients that have got very different interests. So you're working with an architect or a main contractor that want certain things out of a digital copy, but they know that it's going to be used for a facilities management team or a visitor team. And again, they've got different purposes. So we have to plan what we're going to scan. We then have to prepare for what we're going to scan, and then we go and scan it. So this is the stage that's all about capture, the data acquisition, the scale of the object that we're going to record, the complexity of it. We have to think all about that. The data processing, if we're using the Matterport system, it's relatively automatic, but we do have to add the hotspots. If we want to download floor plans or the 3D data, then we're adding in some complexities there. If we then want to import them into our CAD packages, our 3D modeling packages, etc. However, what I would emphasize at this stage is that we're not just creating a copy of something. We're actually creating a digital asset, something that has value, something that is worth something that could be monetized. So I think this stage here, the data processing, is where you add the value. And don't think of it that you've just gone out and photographed something. For certain industries, it has a value. So that's what we end up with. We process the data to create a digital asset, and then it can have a variety of outputs. In most cases, with the technology I'm talking about today, it's got these virtual applications. But equally, we're scanning spaces where people want to put the scan onto their website, but they want to put it behind a paywall because they're seeing that, well, we've got an opportunity to monetize something here. We've got this exhibition space here where we have a rolling program of temporary exhibitions, but if we scan each one, we've got a library of temporary exhibitions. We've got this digital asset that can be monetized. And occasionally, if we're using other scanning technologies, we're producing physical replicas from what we're doing, which again has a completely different value in their own right. So we've been asked to scan a ceiling of historic wallpaper that's fallen down, physically reproduce new parts of that ceiling, install it, and overall install a ceiling. And one we've done recently is for the new Buxton Crescent Hotel in Buxton. It's been featured on an article with the BBC, but there's one room in there that's got some very ornate historic ceiling. Well, we 3D scanned it, and we were able to use a variety of digital fabrication tools to essentially replace that ceiling. So in summary, key benefits is that the technology I'm talking about, I think, from our experience, it's a relatively quick, cost-effective way to create a digital copy, a virtual environment. It's a user-friendly technology compared to other scanning processes. It's had to be because of the kind of people it's dealing with. No disrespect to them at all, but they don't want to become skilled at creating a model. They just need it to show somebody to move on. The quality of the scans is satisfactory for professional use. If you're a quantity surveyor, though, you might want it to be more accurate. It's all relatively portable. You could see we're using iPads, iPhones on site with the scanner. We don't need a power source. The battery lasts many hours. We can scan a place. We can be there all day if needs be, and we've still got power left in the battery. It has its own Wi-Fi network, so you don't need to be reliant on another Wi-Fi. Unless you want to upload the data urgently. So it's quite versatile. From one scan, we can create multiple copies for different kinds of audiences, etc. We can turn areas of the scan off, and we can blur faces and so on. Limitations, as I've said, it's outdoor spaces. We need to have fairly precise lighting conditions if we're doing it outdoor spaces. For the system that we use, there's a one-off cost for the camera. So our Matterport camera cost us just under £3,000, but our terrestrial laser scanner cost us 40-odd grand. So it's relatively good value from the purposes that we use, but we pay a monthly subscription. We pay typically £55 a month for us to have 25 spaces at any one time. We can have more than that as long as we archive them, but we pay £55 a month for 25 spaces. You can pay as little as nothing for one space, or $7.99 for 5 spaces, and then it goes up after 55, where you can have 50, 100, or more spaces. This method, it's as a scanning process, as a spatial data capture technique, it's not as accurate as things like a terrestrial laser scanner. So that gives you an idea of some of the limitations. Hopefully that was of interest to some of you. I think it is quite an exciting technology. We're finding all sorts of applications. I've had 2 inquiries this morning about it. Quite challenging projects, but that's who it is. That's who I am. Yes, I'm at a university, but the area I work in is commercial applications for the technology, and where we actually commercially use them for a variety of applications. So that's me done. I'll hand over to the host to open this up. If any of you've got questions, I'm going to stick around for questions. So, so over to you.
Hi there. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for that. Everybody, please open up your mics and present any questions that you may have for Mike, and or through the chat line if you prefer. Whilst you're doing that, I'll also open up the polling, which we ask you to complete to see whether we're on subject, we're keeping you informed, and whether we need to do something different. So please unmute if you like, and ask the questions, and I'll raise the polling now. Thank you.